Good morning, everyone. The webinar will begin in about 5 minutes. While waiting, I do encourage you to download the handout that's available under the Handouts tab on the control panel. That will summarize today's presentation. You can take notes on it. While we do wait for the webinar to begin, I do have Christy Frieden on the line with us. Good morning, Christy.
Good morning, Patrick.
Just a question for you. Have you noticed that people are more stressed out and unhappy than they've ever been? Why do you think that is?
Yes, actually, I have noticed that. I think it's a combination of a lot of different things, but interestingly, this class, I'm doing it more now than I've ever done. I mean, this class I've done pre-pandemic, and it was sporadic here and there, but now I'm getting a lot of requests for this particular class on happiness. So I think companies are recognizing their employees are maybe struggling a little bit and they want to help them out. And so, yeah, I think overall, and this is my opinion just based on my own personal experience and then going out into different organizations and hearing what people have to say. But I mean, I think overall the pandemic has had, I know we're 2 years out of it at this point, but it has thrown people for a loop. I think people have been through something. Everybody's been through something. And so it's one of those things that is really ever changing. And so just that constant state of change and what that means, people can't quite, settle. They can't quite settle because there's always kind of that next thing that's worried about that next thing that's going to be happening. So I think it's a combination of that. I also think it has to do with social media a little bit. I know that social media can connect us, and it does, but at the same time, it can disconnect us. And so as human beings, we're built to want to be social. I mean, we're social creatures. And so I think it's a double-edged sword there. As I mentioned, it can connect us, but it also can dehumanize people a little bit, or we don't make those true connections. I mean, we may feel like we've got followers or whatever, but are they true connections? And so I think we miss a little bit there.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, I think just the virtual work world has maybe, again, it can connect us and it's great, but I think there's a little bit of disconnect and missing that personal touch, or there's those informal conversations that maybe we used to have that we're not quite having as much. So that, on top of all the bad news that happens every single day, you got to kind of stay away from that. It's really hard to see it. So I think that's overall where all this unhappiness and stress is coming from.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. Yeah, we came through the pandemic. Well, I guess we're still in it, but then with everything going on in the world, and there's just a lot of negativity out there today. And got to find ways to deal with it and get past it.
Right. So hopefully this webinar will help. I'll give you some practical ideas here.
That's good. We are getting real close to starting here.
Okay.
So we are basically right at 11 o'clock. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, the ROI of Happiness, Proven Strategies to Becoming Happier and More Successful at Work. My name is Patrick Allen. I'm the Program Manager for Kent State Center for Corporate and Professional Development Public Open Enrollment Programs. Our center specializes in providing employee development for partnering organizations in Northeast Ohio and around the world. We offer training as both public open enrollment programs, currently being delivered both live and virtually, and also some in-person programs in Independence. We can customize any of our programs and deliver it live and virtually, or we can deliver it in person at your location. I am joined today by Kent State facilitator Christy Frieden. I will be serving as a host, and Christy will be our presenter for today. Christy specializes in motivating, training, and coaching professionals, supervisors, managers and executives in areas of change, leadership, customer service, emotional intelligence, and employee engagement. She has over 17 years of healthcare management experience, most recently working for a Cleveland hospital as a manager of performance management, then as an organizational and performance development specialist. She attained the Developing Leadership through Emotional Intelligence certificate from Case Western Reserve, and also holds a bachelor's degree from Slippery Rock University and a master's from West Virginia University in Vocational Counseling. Her passion and dynamic presentation style, as well as her down-to-earth attitude, engages and motivates her audiences to focus their strength to achieve personal and professional success. For Kent State, Christy facilitates programs such as effective organizational leadership, understanding emotional intelligence, managing transition and embracing change during challenging times, and effective performance management for supervisors and managers. Everyone in attendance has been muted today to avoid background noise from any of the nearly 100 registered participants. And today's webinar will be very interactive, and Christy will be asking for your responses during the presentation. We encourage you to ask questions at any point during the hour. You can submit your questions in writing to me using the questions tab on the control panel on the right side of your screen, and I will present these questions to Christy as time permits throughout the hour. Again, there is a handout available that summarizes today's presentation, and it's located under the Handouts tab on the control panel. We encourage you to download it and take notes during today's presentation. We are recording today's webinar, and you will receive an email next week with a link to the recording after we conclude our time together. And now I'd like to introduce Christy Frieden.
Oh, thank you so much, Patrick. Welcome, everybody. I'm so happy that you've taken this time for yourself to hear a little bit more about happiness and ways to improve or increase your level of happiness. So today's objectives for the next hour, we're going to talk about the relationship between happiness and success. Understand the antidote to daily stress, and then I'm going to give you proven ways to increase your level of well-being and personal effectiveness. This is a real important topic, as Patrick had mentioned at the very beginning, talking about people just seem really unhappy lately, stressed out. And so it's important that you take the time to focus on wellness and well-being, and your emotional health is a big part of that. And interestingly, we may have a little more control over it than we may think. And so I want to take you through some of these ideas and hopefully help you out to at least increase your level of happiness, and then share this stuff with other people to help those around you to increase their level of happiness. So just a little bit about me, both personally and professionally. And while I'm doing this, I want you to think about you and what makes you happy. So I've put these pictures up on the screen to give you a little bit of background about myself, but I want you to think really, if you had to put a little slide together on the pictures that make you happy, what would they include? So think about that as you look at this. But essentially, I've been married. I've been married for 26 years, coming up this June. I have two daughters, one of them who just finished her sophomore year at John Carroll, and the other one who just is finishing up her junior year in high school, plays volleyball. I have a little micro mini golden doodle named Olive, and she is my third daughter, technically. We have a place on the lake that we're renovating right now, and we really love to be in Lake Erie and Madison. I love collecting beach glass, and honestly, for the jigsaw puzzle there, the pandemic I found a new love for jigsaw puzzling. So I do that. But essentially, these are the things that make me happy. And it's really important for you to think about the things that make you happy. And as you think about that, what is it that gets in the way of you doing these things? You know, what gets in the way? And can you make a more of an effort to do these things? Oftentimes we just get caught up in work and our responsibilities and all of that, but it's important that we really try to do these things regularly try to do these things that make us happy. So I would start with that. First of all, figure out what it is, identify it, and then really make a huge effort to try to put these things in your life on a regular basis. So let's talk about happiness. You know, there is no real single definition of happiness because it's really subjective. It's based on everybody's individual experience and what brings them joy. But essentially, there are three components to it. The three components are pleasure combined with the deeper feelings of meaning and purpose. So those positive feelings and then their connection with the meaning and purpose in your life. And so what happiness implies is that we have a positive mood in the present and that we have a positive outlook toward the future. So that's essentially, in a nutshell, when we think about happiness, how scientists kind of define it or summarize it. So the question then becomes, how happy are you? And so I'm going to, and in your handout, there's this quiz. It's called the Satisfaction with Life Scale. And this is something that's been around a long time, but it's a real good indicator of, you know, how well or how happy or what kind of quality you feel you're having in your life. Like, are you feeling like you're on the right track? And so there are 5 statements I'm going to show you on the next slide, but they are in your handout. And you're going to rate yourself according to how much you agree or disagree with the statement. So 1 is strongly disagree, and then 7 is strongly agree. So I'm going to give you a moment to actually rate yourself on these 5 statements, 1 through 7. 1 is strongly disagree, and then all the way through 7, and 7 is strongly agree. So go ahead and rate yourself on those 5 statements. And then when you're done rating yourself, you are going to total your scores. So let me give you an extra moment or two here. So if you rate yourself, you total your scores, we are going to do a polling question here in a minute. But essentially where you fall, you can kind of see where you are in terms of satisfaction of life. This is a very widely used and empirically validated assessment. If you fall in slightly satisfied, that happens to be the most common. But I'd just like to hear just from the attendees today where you fall. So here's our first polling question for you. A would be you're extremely satisfied or satisfied. B, slightly satisfied. C, neutral. D is slightly dissatisfied to dissatisfied. And then E is extremely dissatisfied. So go ahead and if Patrick, you can open up the polling question.
Okay, it is open. Okay, a few more seconds because it looks like most people have voted. All right, so the results are with 46% slightly satisfied,
okay,
21% slightly dissatisfied or dissatisfied, 18% neutral, 13% extremely satisfied or satisfied, and only 3% are extremely dissatisfied.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so we've got, as we think about where we typically fall as far as slightly satisfied, we've got a majority of people there. I appreciate you being honest and just assessing yourself and figuring out where you are. So thank you for sharing that. It helps me to kind of gauge where we are in terms of the attendees. So the question then becomes, all right, so I've assessed myself here. Now, what do I do with this information? You know, we've identified now your happiness baseline. And so my recommendation, not here in this class, but as you think about it going forward, there's some questions to keep in mind or consider. You know, thinking about what areas of your life are going well in terms of health, relationships, family, friends, work, community involvement, spirituality. Think about those areas that you think are on track, are going well. And then think about those areas where you would essentially like to experience growth. I don't like to say those things that aren't going well, but essentially that's what you're looking at. Those things that could be improved, where you think you could probably work at a little bit, or improve on, or just get a little more satisfaction out of other areas of your life. So think about those. And then the third question, and I think it's a real important one, is essentially, you know, when you think about those important lessons that you've learned in life, you know, just based on the mistakes that you've made. Oftentimes, our greatest lessons are from our greatest mistakes or missteps. And so it's important that we don't beat ourselves up, that we're not like regretting maybe mistakes that we made in the past, that we're really trying to live in the present, move forward, and just learn from those things. That's why you know, we experience those things, so we can learn and grow from those things. So trying not to you know, to feel guilty or regretful, but moving forward, taking the lessons, and then, you know, improving those areas that you think need improvement, and also really finding joy in those areas that are going as you'd like them to go. So there's just a couple questions to reflect on. Okay, so let's take a look at the research and why happiness is so important. So my first question for you is, what comes first? Does happiness come before success, or do we need to achieve success to be happy? So it's an interesting question. And so what I'd like to ask you is if you could fill in the blank. I will be happy when. And a lot of times we have these criteria in our mind. Like, I'll be happy when I lose 10 pounds. I'll be happy when I finish my degree. I'll be happy when I get married. We have all these criteria in our mind that if we just reach this goal, if we can just achieve this thing, then all the happiness in the world will come to us. And I think we're sometimes that's just how we're geared. Like, we're thinking, like, if I just work hard enough, if I just suffer and sacrifice long enough, I'll achieve that goal. And then that goal, once I achieve it, will bring me happiness. But actually, the research shows, it turns out that our brains are literally hardwired to perform at their best, not when they are negative or neutral, but when they are positive. So we need to be in a positive frame of mind first, and then happiness will come. So positive frame of mind first, and then success will follow. And there's a lot of research around this. A lot of research about happy workers and how they get, you know, better performance evaluations, and they get paid more, and they, you know, they're better in sales, and they don't experience burnout as much. And even happy people, the research for happy people, that their relationships are better, they're more satisfied, they make connections easier with people, that, you know, they essentially they're more stable, and stable relationships. So there's a lot of research here. So it really, happiness, being happy, impacts every domain of our lives. So we're thinking about relationships and family and our health and our work life, and even our brain function actually is better when we are in a positive frame of mind. So there's a little bit of research here that I want to share with you, but I do want to step back for a second and talk about negative emotions. So our goal in life isn't to totally get rid of negative emotions. We have to have negative emotions. They are a part of who we are. And essentially what negative emotions do for us is that it's a message to us that we need to take some kind of action. So if we're experiencing frustration or anxiety or anger or fear, or any of these negative emotions, it's a message to us that we need to take some kind of action or do something differently. Think about fight or flight. Okay, it's a way of a survival mechanism built in. So that's what negative emotions do for us. The problem becomes when we get stuck in negative emotions. Okay, when we get stuck in them and we can't quite, we either like it, we get something from it, being miserable, and some people do, and you probably know some people who do, or we just can't quite get out of it. And I will say, and I feel strongly about this. If you feel like you're really stuck in some negative emotions and you've tried a lot of things and you can't get out of it, then there's no shame in seeking professional help. It's okay. I mean, it really is okay, and sometimes it's necessary. So I do want to make sure that you recognize that sometimes when we're really having trouble, it's really important that we seek some type of professional help to help us through that. But there actually is a magic ratio of positive to negative emotions to be what's considered flourishing in your life. And the actual ratio is 3 to 1. You need 3 positive emotions for every 1 negative emotion in order to be what's considered flourishing in your life. And in terms of positive emotions, what they do for us, just like negative emotions are a message to take action, positive emotions, and what they call it is the broaden and build theory of positivity. Positive emotions help us to take care of each other, build and work with each other, cooperate with each other, gives us energy to love each other, care for each other, expand, our knowledge and abilities. That's what positive emotions do for us. And here's some really interesting research about it. So when you're in a positive frame of mind, it actually literally expands your peripheral vision. You can see more out of your peripheral vision when you're in a positive frame of mind. And think about when you're really angry, how's your vision? Is essentially tunnel vision. So interesting. It expands your conceptual connections and creativity. Your brain's actually able to make those connections. So I always talk with organizations and with leaders or managers. Can you do things that intentionally create positive emotions with your people? Because that's when you can be more solution focused, when you can be more innovative, when you're more productive, when you're more creative. So it's important that organizations intentionally try to create positive emotions with their employees. More accurate decision making. Lots of research here, but one of the things that's really interesting is they did research with physicians. They put one group in a positive frame of mind. I'll tell you how they did in a second. And what they found were the physicians that were put in a positive frame of mind were quickly and more accurately able to diagnose patients over the group that wasn't. And the way they did it was gave them a gift of candy, and they weren't even allowed to eat the candy, okay? But just a gift of candy made them quickly and more accurately diagnose patients. So the takeaway there is definitely bring your doctor some candy the next time you go see him or her. It increases interpersonal effectiveness. People who are in a positive frame of mind increases interpersonal effectiveness. And you've probably recognized this at some point in your life. I always I say the statement, people would rather talk to someone nice over someone knowledgeable. And it's so true. It's a natural human response. We want to approach things that provide us pleasure, and we want to avoid things that provide us pain. So I always say in the work environment, you can have the most knowledge of anybody in the group, but if you're not at least being polite, respectful, cooperative, pleasant, people aren't coming to you. Okay, they will go to everybody else before they come to you, even if you are the most knowledgeable, because it's that interpersonal effectiveness. People who are more positive, that's where people want to be around that person. Okay, people want to collaborate and work with that person. So it's really important. It increases attention. Actually, if you're in a positive frame of mind, you can pay attention longer and retain more information. And it builds physical health. And this was a study done by a group that looked at the Sisters of the Notre Dame, and these nuns have since passed away, but they took their journals and coded them for every positive entry, every negative entry, and every neutral entry. And what they found were the nuns that had more positive entries over negative and neutral lived an average of 10 years longer. 10 years longer. So, when we think about longevity, we think, oh, we need to exercise, we need to eat right, we need to maybe decrease our stress and get better sleep, but intentionally creating more positive emotions can also increase longevity. So really, really interesting. So before we get into specific strategies, and this is where we're going to head into specific strategies, Patrick, is there any questions or anything that anyone has shared with you that needs to be asked at this point?
We have a couple. First one,
Okay.
what is a conceptual connection?
Okay. So it's those connections in your brain. When you think about a concept, you think about coming up with a new idea and you're like, oh yeah, like that light bulb moment, that conceptual connection. That's what that refers to.
Okay. One more. How can I be happy when everyone around me is so negative?
Oof. That's a good one, and that's actually probably a pretty common one, right? And it can be a struggle for sure. Um, I teach an emotional intelligence class, and the whole idea of emotions being contagious is real. That's how we're built. Okay, we're always kind of feeding off each other. As I mentioned at the beginning, we're social creatures, and so it's very, very hard to keep that positivity when those around us are negative. But really, what we only can do is control ourselves, and we're going to get into that. Actually, that's a great question that leads us into the next part of this webinar, because we can only really control ourselves. We can't necessarily control other people or fix other people, and even though we want to sometimes, but oftentimes we just have to do those things that help us and figure out, not worry, let some of those things go that we can't control. Any other questions, Patrick, before we move on? Because that's a great segue into our next piece of this.
Nope, you can go ahead.
All right, excellent. Okay, so the question then becomes, how can we experience more happiness? What can we do? So I'm going to share with you a model. I'm going to also share with you a formula, and then I'm going to share with you some proven specific activities that will increase your level of happiness and well-being. So the first one is this model. So what I want you to do right now, I'm going to give you a moment to list out, either on a scratch sheet, a piece of paper, or anywhere, just list out what are your current worries, concerns, stressors. What are you stressed out about right now? So I'm going to give you a chance to just quickly jot those things down. And then I'm going to share with you a model, and you're going to try to apply the model to all of these worries, concerns, frustrations, and stressors. Sometimes it's helpful just to list them out. Okay, that can help you to begin with, but I want you to list them out so then we can apply them. Okay, so this is a model, and it helps you to think about these different stressors that you have in your life and where they fall and what you could potentially do about it. And then essentially, what are you focused on? Where are you spending your emotional energy? So the first one is that circle in the middle, the target there, that green circle there, that's your sphere of control. So the question becomes, who or what falls in your sphere of control? And the only person that falls in your sphere of control is you. You're the only person that you have full and total control over. And even sometimes that's hard, right? you see the big bag of Cheetos in the pantry and you know you shouldn't eat them, but you do it anyway. So sometimes it's really hard to control ourselves. But that's really the only person we have full and total control over. And what do we have control over of ourselves? Our actions, our words, our attitude, maybe how we keep our workspace, our approach to different things. These are things that we have control over. Okay, moving out then, in that yellow circle, there's our sphere of influence. So the question here is, who or what falls in your sphere of influence? So it's essentially anybody that you potentially interact with on a daily basis can fall in your sphere of influence, whether it's family, friends, colleagues, coworkers, your boss, people that you interact with, at the grocery store, or doing errands, or whoever. Those are potentially people that you can influence. You can't control them, but you may be able to influence them. The other thing that falls in the sphere of influence, depending on your role or what you do, it could be policies, procedures, the way you go about things. Okay, that can fall into influence as well. But the thing here is that oftentimes we worry about those people, or we think we can try to control other people, but what we can only do is influence them. So if we want someone to do something or to stop doing something, maybe the influencing strategy that we're using currently is not working and we need to change our strategy. When we think about influencing strategies, there's things like, reward and recognition, consequences, being a role model, tapping into emotions or best practices or examples, facts, data, information. Those are all different types of influencing strategies. So sometimes it's about just changing up our influencing strategy, but ultimately we can't control another person or situation. And then finally, in the red circle there, that's your sphere of concern, or as I like to say, no control. So the question becomes, who or what falls there? And the answer is everything else. Okay, everything else falls there. The traffic, the weather, whether you get downsized or bought out, whether your boss, takes another job somewhere, or you, get another colleague or coworker on your team, health situations, different circumstances, a pandemic. I mean, all of these things fall in our sphere of concern, or essentially no control. And so the question becomes, first of all, when you listed out all of your stressors and concerns, if you applied them to this model, where would they fall? And if they fall anywhere, if they fall in the red part, you got to let them go. Okay. If they fall in the yellow part, maybe you need to make some adjustments and figure out how can you influence that to get the best outcome. And if they fall in the green part, your control, that's adjustments that you maybe need to make. The other thing I would say about this is sometimes things fall in that sphere of concern and we worry about them trying to anticipate the future. Like, what if I lose my job, or what if my company goes under or gets bought out and then I lose my job? And so I get that we have true valid concerns for that. And so sometimes what it boils down to is breaking that down and thinking about, okay, what can I do about it? Where it pushes it more into that sphere of control. And so what I would say is, for example, with that example of maybe worried that you're going to lose your job, it may be, maybe I need to start working on a resume, or maybe I need to start looking into other possibilities in case that does happen, mitigating that risk a little bit. So sometimes instead of just worrying about it and like letting it just kind of overtake you, it's like, okay, what action can I take to either influence this, or what can I do what's the piece of this that I can control? And so sometimes just moving it toward the middle, okay, more toward what you can control, or thinking about what you can control, can really help you in this particular, whatever circumstance that you're struggling with. Okay, so I think we have another polling question, just based off of where you think most of your worries, concerns, stressors fell. So Patrick, so here's the thing. I want to know, where did most of these fall? Did they fall in your sphere of control, your sphere of influence, or your sphere of concern? Patrick, if you'd open it up and let people answer that.
Okay, it is open. Okay, just a few more seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so 39% say sphere of concern, 34% influence, and 27% control.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that's pretty evenly split. For the most part, more in the concern. And so, you know, it's those are the, when things fall there, it's not worth your mental energy and effort, because it can really help. It really helps you to fall in victim mode if you're really concerned about all those things that fall in the sphere of concern and you can't control them at all. There's nothing you can do about it. And so it's trying to, it's kind of mental gymnastics a little bit, but trying to let those things go, realizing you cannot do anything about those things. And so hopefully just that knowledge can help you to take a deep breath and realize, okay, I gotta move forward. I can't, you know, keep letting this replay in my mind. I need to let this go a little bit. It's interesting. I utilize this model. I bring it to my attention. So sometimes, you know, you'll just, you know, doing something and you go off the rails thinking about something in your mind, like worrying about what if this happens, and then just bringing this model to your mind can help you to put it into perspective. And so that's my first model for you to let go of those things that that you have absolutely no control over, focus on potentially influence, and then ultimately focus on that sphere of control. What you can do with yourself, whether it's change your behavior, change your mindset, change your attitude, think about something differently, ask additional questions. You know, what is it that you can do? Because you're the only one you can control. Okay, so the next thing I want to share with you to help you in kind of being happier is thinking about this formula, E plus R equals O. It's one of my favorite things. When I teach emotional intelligence and talk about self-management, this is the key of self-management. So the question is, you know, what does E, R, and O stand for? Event plus your response equals the outcome. And here's the thing, if we don't like the outcome of a certain situation, and if it happens again, we need to change our response, because we cannot change the event. The event meaning the person, the circumstance, the situation, anything that happens to us. We need to focus on how we respond to it, because that's what we can control. And then ultimately the outcome, we can't control the outcome necessarily, but we can influence it, okay? And it's all based on how we respond to something. And as you think about, you know, things that may happen in your life, like let's say someone's really angry at you, and let's say their work situation, someone gets really angry, they start blaming you about with something. Think about, what are some negative responses to that, and what would potentially negative outcomes be? Maybe you yell back, maybe you storm off, maybe you swear at them, call them names, laugh at them, whatever. These would be a negative response. The potential outcome to that situation is, you know, the person, you know, there's no resolution to the situation. The person, you can't work with the person anymore. The relationship is completely fallen apart. Depending on your behavior, it could be a trip to HR, or even worse. Also, you know, just a bad reputation for handling a difficult conversation. So let's go back now. Let's say, again, someone's maybe angry at you, in your face, blaming you. What would be a more positive professional response? Maybe I actively listen. I remain calm. I maybe ask questions, show a little empathy. Maybe we sit down, or we move to a different location. So what would potential outcome to that be? It could be a resolution to the problem, a improved relationship, a good reputation for handling difficult conversations, increased morale, those types of things. Okay, so it's really not about the event, it's about your response. Oh, and I do want to mention this, just as a side note. Some people say the walk away. Okay, so the walk away could fall in a negative response or a positive response, because it's depending how you do it. A negative response walk away is whatever, slamming the door, throwing things, stomping off, that type of thing. A more positive or professional response walk away would be something like, hey, I can see you're really upset. I'm getting upset. Let's both calm down and we can come back to this maybe later or tomorrow or something like that, where you're setting the expectation that you're going to come back to it. So I think walking away can be a positive response. It just depends on how you do it. So ultimately, it's about our response. And so we think about Stephen Covey. He is the author. He wrote the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, classic book. But in that book, he talks about the space between stimulus and response, the space between when something happens to us and how we respond to it, and that all of our personal power lies within that space. And so it really is important that we're focused not on the other person, okay, when we're angry or upset, stressed out, whatever. It's really about how we respond to it that makes all the difference. And so I really like this, and this is in your material, so you can kind of remember this, because it's so true that our ultimate freedom is the right and power to decide how anybody or anything outside ourselves will affect us. Okay, so it goes back to when we're experiencing negative emotions. Let's say we're really, we have a difficult conversation with somebody and we say, well, if she'd just do this, I wouldn't be so mad, or she made me so mad, or that type of thing. If we're what we're doing there is we're not taking responsibility necessarily for what happened, and we are also giving our emotional health away to somebody else. We're saying, whatever this person does will decide whether I'm angry or not. And so we need to reframe things like that, and just thinking about, how do we respond to things? And is it making it better for us, or is it making it worse? And not blaming other people or outside circumstances for what we're feeling. Okay, at this point, before we get into the last portion, which is I have 7 proven strategies for increasing your level of happiness. Is there any questions at this point, Patrick? Any questions?
Just one.
Okay.
How can I make the right response with those people who drive me crazy?
Yeah, I know, it's tough. It is really, really tough. Sometimes we get so worked up in our mind, we make a lot of assumptions about that other person or the situation. We think they're intentionally doing things to drive us crazy, and whether they are intentionally doing it or not, it's still up to us. We still have to maintain, our response is up to us and what we can do. It's not easy. Sometimes it's just anticipating the interaction. Like if I know I have to have a meeting with John or something, and John and I don't get along, he actually makes me a little crazy. What I need to do is anticipate that conversation and say, okay, when he says this, I'm going to say this. Have a little pre-plan in your mind so that you can. It's about expanding that space, right? Literally expanding that space between what John says and what my response is going to be. So mentally, I have to have a plan on how I can deal with people like that, or people that really I struggle with. So that's a good question, though. And I think that's a common question. Okay. All right. So the final few minutes here, I want to share with you some proven strategies for improving your mood and raising your level of happiness. So these are research proven strategies. They not only give us a quick boost of positive emotions, but if you do them enough, they can improve your performance. Okay. And they can permanently raise your happiness baseline. So everyone has a happiness baseline. We talked about that a little bit during that assessment at the beginning. So we want to continually try to raise that happiness baseline. And the thing about these 7 things is that you got to pick the things that work for you, but they're really not that hard. Okay. So trying to intentionally do these things can really help. So the first one is actually very simple: look forward to something. Um, and that probably seems really, really simple and easy. And it is. And it can be something big like a vacation. I mean, you're looking forward to taking that time off to that wonderful vacation you're going on. But it can be as simple as, I'm looking forward to having the spaghetti dinner tonight, or I'm looking forward to going home and, spending time with my dog or my kids, or doing that activity that I really enjoy. So sometimes it's about just looking forward to something. And really interesting. So the one study that's up there is that, people who were just told to think about their favorite movie actually increase their endorphin level by 27%, just thinking about it. So it's that anticipation, or just thinking about those positive times in your life, or what you have to look forward to, can be huge. So look forward to something. That's pretty easy. The next one is conscious acts of kindness, doing those things that are kind for people. Um, which is, and right now in the world, it would be a great time to do that. We need more kindness in the world, right? And this is, acts of kindness for strangers or for friends. It doesn't matter. But what they found was it can decrease your stress and contributes to your health, and obviously improves, gives that other person a little boost of positivity for doing that act of kindness. But it's simple things like you're going to your car, and you're see maybe someone who's struggling with putting their groceries in their car, and you help them out, or you pay for that person behind you in line at Starbucks, or a handwritten thank you note. I mean, when's the last time you got a handwritten thank you note? I mean, it's these things that are really, really simple. um, but just be on the lookout. Maybe even bringing cookies to your neighbor or something along those lines. Just conscious acts of kindness are one of those other activities that can really help you. Next is infuse positivity. Now this is a very broad area, but it's the goal here is that we're constantly trying to infuse positivity in whatever we're doing. So one of the things on a personal note that I have done for a long time is the whole exercise, 3 good things. And I did it at the dinner table with my family. And so what we would do, when we're sitting around at the dinner table saying, hey, what are the 3 good things that happened to you today? And as a parent, I found out more information in that conversation than if I would just said, hey, how was your day? And what I found was, it's easy to come up with good things, and then it really sparks some good conversation, things that you wouldn't necessarily have even known about your family or your friends or whatever. And so the premise of this whole exercise is that if you do it enough, you know that you're going to have to share your 3 good things, so you're paying attention, you're focused more on the good things that are happening to you in the day. And so that's a good one. The other thing, as far as work goes, and this can be in the virtual world or in-person world, and that is, before a meeting starts, just go around and say, hey, what's one good thing that happened to you since the last time we met? That's a great way to start off a meeting, and you find out more about your colleagues and coworkers. So the question here is, what can you do to intentionally create more positive emotions at work, or even in your personal life? Okay. Um, the next one is exercise. Okay, well, I think everyone's probably heard that exercise is good for you for many different reasons, but it's extremely beneficial for increasing your mood or boosting your mood. So, just the things about exercise, find something that you like to do. Um, Clearing the path. So, what I mean by this is, let's say, you really want to get on a good exercise kick, and you decide, okay, I'm going to join that gym. I mean, gym's about half an hour from your house, but I'm going to join that gym. I'm going to be on and after what, a month or maybe even a week or two, it's hard to drive 30 minutes to go to the gym instead of just walking outside, right? That's easy. Just so find making it easy for you to do, making it easy, not making it harder than it has to be. Finding that greater purpose, why do you want to exercise? You want to get healthier for your family, whatever that may be. And then, of course, baby steps. Don't say, I'm going to run a marathon, even though you've never been a runner at all. Maybe it's just, I'm going to, take small baby steps, and I'm going to just, walk around the track, or I'm going to maybe run a mile and then kind of build off of that. So really, really important there. The next one, spend money, but not on stuff. Oh, bummer. What do you think it is? It's actually experiences, vacations, lessons, spending it on others, education, charities, just giving anonymously. These are things that really truly increase happiness. It might be great to buy those new pair of shoes, and it gives you that little quick boost, I guess, but it doesn't last. And so, one person in my class one time said, I have grandchildren and I don't even buy them stuff anymore. I buy them tickets, or we take trips, or I give them experiences. And so it's like making those memories. Those are the things that last. And so spending money, but not on stuff. The next one is using a signature strength. I don't know if you've done this before, but I love doing this. I do a lot of coaching. And so I always use StrengthsFinder 2.0 to help you know what your top 5 strengths are. And then, just ultimately what you focus on grows. Instead of focus on your weaknesses, focus on your strengths, all right? Because that's where that passion and enthusiasm really comes in. That's where, you get that energy when you're utilizing your strengths. And then if you're a supervisor, focus on other strength, focus on the strengths of your people instead of looking at what they're not doing. Hey, looking at what they're doing, and put them in situations where they can utilize their strengths. So there's an interesting bit of research about strengths. And so my question to you is, and this is a particular bit of research that that was done by StrengthsFinder. And the question is, at work, I have the opportunity to do what I do best every day. So if we could open up the polling question here, Patrick. A, strongly agree, B, agree, C, disagree, or D, strongly disagree. The question, at work, I have the opportunity to do what I do best every day.
Okay, it is open. Looks like people are voting pretty quickly on this one, so that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Just a couple more seconds. I'm going to close it. All right. So at 68%, we have agree. At 17%, disagree. 11 strongly agree, and only 4 strongly disagree.
Okay. All right. Well, here's the thing. If you agree or strongly agree with that statement, you are 6 times more likely to be engaged in your work, and you are 3 times more likely to have a better overall quality of life in general. Okay. If you agree or strongly agree with that statement. So it's powerful. Utilizing your strengths is powerful. And, you're the only one who can advocate for utilizing your strengths. So if you know what your strengths are, and if you don't, StrengthsFinder will help you figure that out. But if you know what your strengths are, advocate for utilizing those strengths. And if you can't do it at work, do it in your personal life, whether you're in some type of community involvement or with your family or whatever. If you just try to put your strengths to work every day, because it really can help you um, feel engaged, alive, passionate about what you're doing, and it's really, really important. So if you haven't done Strengths Finder, I highly recommend it. It's a wonderful assessment. And then finally, the last proven strategy is meditation. Um, if you really feel like you're struggling with stress and unhappiness, try meditation. It's not easy, okay, at first. It takes practice, and it's about just paying attention to your breath going in and out. But this is the actual activity that if you do it regularly, it can permanently rewire your brain, raise those levels of happiness, lower your stress, improve immune function. There's so much about meditation. Um, there's a lot of good apps out there too. Calm is one of them. Headspace is another one. But these things are really, really great in terms of helping you to meditate. But you gotta give yourself some time with it and practice with it, because it's, especially if you're worried and your brain goes a mile a minute all the time. You gotta to actually paying attention to your breath, live in the moment. It can be challenging, but it just takes practice to get into it. Um, okay, so we're going to open it up to some questions here, but I do want to mention, just to review what we've talked about, the relationship between happiness and success, that you need to be happy, then success follows. That antidote to daily stress, which is focusing on what you can control, that E plus R equals O, that response is so important. And then obviously taking a look at those strategies that if you do them enough, they're going to increase that happiness baseline. But before we open up to questions, I do want to share a really quick passage in this book called Positivity by Barbara Fredrickson. And it's something a key takeaway here. It says, one evening, an old Cherokee told his grandson about a battle that goes on inside people. He said, my son, the battle is between two wolves inside us all. One is evil. It's anger, envy, jealousy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. The other's good. It's joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. The grandson thought about it for a minute and then asked his grandfather, which wolf wins? And the old Cherokee simply replied, the one you feed. So with that, I hope I've given you some strategies. Patrick, are there questions that I can answer for the audience?
Yes, there sure are. First one, when I feel like I am getting stress from 10 different angles, with most are out of my control, what is the best way to cope?
The best way to cope is to take a deep breath. Okay, take a deep breath. I would recommend just writing out, doing some type of writing out your priority, writing out everything that's stress, and then list out what's priority in the moment. I think sometimes we get so flustered with everything all at once, and sometimes just writing them out and then figuring out what's the priority right now and starting with that, taking some action with that. But yeah, it's about taking a deep breath. I mean, if you're feeling like you're getting, the only person that can do anything about the stress you feel is you. And so that's why identifying those things that you really enjoy, what are those things you can do to de-stress, and doing those things, taking time for yourself. Self-care is huge and important, but sometimes just listing it out and then really focusing on the priority right now and then going from there is what I would recommend.
Okay. Next question. How can I get past a situation when I am not allowed to address it?
Well,
Tough one.
that is a tough one. But it's one of those things where sometimes in life, so what I think about that, and I don't know if it's a work situation or a personal situation, but I guess it doesn't necessarily matter which. Sometimes it's about, can you address the situation? If the answer to that is no, the next question is, can you change your thoughts about the situation? Maybe you can reframe it in your mind, think about it a little differently. But the last question is it time for a change? And sometimes it's getting a different position. It's ending that relationship. It's, moving forward in a different direction, leaving kind of that situation behind. And I'm not saying, because I don't know anything about, the circumstance, but sometimes it's in those moments when you have to make that really tough choice to change that direction that can end up being the best thing that ever happened. And I know personally, I've been in those situations a couple times. And at the time it was terrible and stressful, but I made the decision to leave or change. And looking back on it, it sent me on a different path in my life that was so much better. So I'm sorry, I can't give you any more specifics to that, but that's what I have to say, I guess.
All
Tough.
right. I think that was good. Time for one last question. How do I know what makes my team happy, and what can I do to increase my team's happiness as a whole?
Yeah, and that's a good one, because the things that make one person happy don't necessarily make another person happy. So I guess the first thing I would say is ask them, have the conversation about, what do you think your strengths are? What could I do to help you utilize those strengths? What really makes you happy? What's your passion? What do you want to, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I mean, these are all really good questions to get to people's motivation, what makes them happy, what they enjoy doing. And then, as a whole for the team, I would intentionally try to create more positive interactions, whether it's, starting those meetings with just, that, like that question I said before, little icebreaker things, the best thing that happened to you since the last time we met, the most favorite vacation you've ever been on, your favorite kind of ice cream. I mean, just little things like that, where you start the meeting like that and you get to know about each other, and it puts people in a positive frame of mind before the meeting even starts. So intentionally doing team bonding, focusing on the positives, that type of thing with everybody, it can be hugely beneficial.
Great. Well, thank you. So that does conclude our time together. We would like to thank you for attending and encourage you to check out and register for our upcoming programs. You can view them at www.kent.edu/yourtrainingpartner, or you can contact us at 330-672-3416 or at yourtrainingpartner@kent.edu. We can bring all programs to your organization virtually or in person and tailor them to meet your needs. And you can join our extensive list of clients to bring Kent State to your organization. We also encourage you to register for our next webinar on Friday, June 17th, when we will be discussing a mental bandwidth perspective on increasing employee engagement with Kent State facilitator, Dr. Tina Bargava. And I really do encourage you to register for that, because she is one of the leading and only experts in this research. And during this webinar, we'll review the basics of mental bandwidth, discuss 2 powerful ways to limit bandwidth exhaustion, and learn a secret for helping your team members invigorate their bandwidth. Register for that is now open at our website. And for those attending live right now, you will be asked to complete a short survey. Please complete this survey so that we can be assured that we are bringing you the most usable and relevant content possible. You will also receive a follow-up email early next week with a link to view a recording of today's webinar. On behalf of Kent State's Center for Corporate and Professional Development and our presenter, Christy Frieden, thank you for attending today, and have a great weekend.